Why'd you gain all that weight?
Someone close to me passed away, and it had an effect on me.
Okay, all right. Sam, we'll start with you. How did the idea for the original play come about, and how did you come to adapt it for the screen?
Yeah, I started working on this play about 13 years ago. At the time, I was teaching expository writing at Rutgers. Both my husband and then boyfriend, now husband, and I were teaching expository writing, and I was kind of desperately trying to connect to my deeply disaffected college freshman students who didn't want to be there. And at one point, I became kind of desperate and just begged them to write something honest. And one of my students wrote a line that ended up in the play and the film, which was, I think I need to accept that my life isn't going to be very exciting. And so then I just had the very kind of arcane idea of writing a play about an expository writing teacher trying to connect with a young person. And I had a few false starts, but it wasn't until I started to put some more personal stuff on the line, started accessing some personal history of mine surrounding growing up gay in a small town in North Idaho where Charlie lives, and attending a fundamentalist school, much like the church that Thomas attends, and falling into depression and self-medicating with food for a very long time. Nothing in the play or the movie is autobiographical, but it's kind of like auto-fiction. And so when I first started writing it, I thought maybe this is just for me. I mean, maybe this just wants to be an active therapy or purgation. And then I just very slowly started showing it to people, and now, my God, here we are.
So Brendan, what drew you to this project and this character in particular?
Well, the word went out that Darren Aronofsky was going to make a film, and he was interested in meeting with me. And clearly the answer is yes. He's a world-class director. I sat down with him, and I knew very little about the project, apart from that it was the story of a man who had been living alone, who had certain regrets for his life choices, that he had been overeating to such the extent that it was very harmful to him and his health. And he has an epiphany of sorts that he really has to accept the circumstances. But more than that, he must reconnect with his estranged daughter. And I knew only that. Darren explained to me that he didn't know if he was going to make the movie or not. It was really contingent on lots of things, namely, the elephant in the room was, who am I going to cast for the role? And I was hopeful that it would be me, but he had to explain that it would be creating a character body, much in the same way that you would do with any special effects, makeup, or costuming or apparatus, and that he had his longtime collaborator Adrian Moreau working for him on this, to create Charlie, a man who weighs hundreds and hundreds of pounds, who lives in his 2-bedroom apartment in somewhere Idaho, alone, and to do that with as much authenticity and dignity as is possible. So that meant creating Charlie's body to obey the laws of physics and gravity, which may seem counterintuitive, but we haven't really seen this makeup done this way before in films that I can think of. And I looked really closely at many films. I looked at many actors who live with obesity in films to see how the types of characters that they were asked to play, what their objectives were they just there as a one-line, one-note cheap joke, or was the outfit that they're wearing the same? And I was comforted that in The Whale, this is not that. And an entire production team went into creating Charlie. And then there's the story that moved me in ways that I was not anticipating. I finally had sight of the screenplay. it rendered me speechless. It made me feel like having kids of my own, that I could identify with the need to connect with your child, even when you think that it's impossible, as Charlie does, but you still must try no matter what. Clearly, my circumstances aren't the same as this character's, but it fueled me. It gave me a great deal of inspiration and strength, and it upped the stakes of everything that I felt I had to bring to playing the part of a man who is that first and foremost. He's a person, he's a human being, he's an educator, he's a father, he's an optimist. He's not the person as he merely presents. And that beautiful dramatic conceit that Sam wrote the story hinged it on, asking us to not overlook those and dismiss them as we're so often want to do, but look deeper. And by story's end, I knew that we would be challenged, if not outright converted, to admit that we're now going to reorient and gather ourselves about how we feel about this story and the vestiges of the prejudice that we do hold as a society walking into this, that will undoubtedly be changed by story's end.
Yeah, I mean, you answered a lot of my questions. But one thing that I had two very quick things. What was it like? You know, there was a 3-week rehearsal process. What was it? And you were on set the whole time.
Mhm.
What was it like and that's not, standard for like a writer to be
No.
on set the whole time.
No.
What was that like for both of you personally to have that kind of interaction?
Helpful.
I hope so.
No, absolutely. No, it was. I mean, there's the joke about living playwrights,
Right.
but this was not that case, because he was there to let us know what the emotional reality of these characters, knowing it intimately from having had it produced in New York and all over the country and all points of the compass since, and having had written and translated his own stage play to a screenplay is not an everyday occurrence that happens, and it was a rare boon and commodity and resource, and those opinions were always those questions were always able to be brought to Sam in the best way possible, and I know that he always welcomed the dialogue that we had creatively that arose through the rehearsal process, because that's what it's about. What I admired most about not only being given that amount of time to do that, so that we, frankly, knew what our job was before we showed up at the built set, was that it brought us so much closer together. And not just because it was made in the time of COVID and something interesting happened that we wound up caring about one another even more, to be careful, but it gave us a stronger sense of purpose to have the resources that we needed right there on the day in a small company. It was very helpful to have Sam standing by.
I mean, I would.
Oh, go ahead. Go ahead.
No, I was just so grateful to be there, as you point out. Like, it's so rare for the screenwriter, to be on set the entire time and being given the gift to work closely with Darren and Brendan and Sadie and Hong and see it all come together. I mean, over the years I've had like 15 or so different plays get produced, and so I know that process very well, of like developing it and then going to the rehearsals. And I've always, over the years, I've really realized that the best way I can be of service to the team as the writer is to not come in to a rehearsal process like, oh, I'm here to make sure that it is said a certain way or that the lines are right. I mean, it's really not about that. It's once I've developed the script, once that is done, I'm there to be in service of everybody else. And that's both because I want to be I want everybody to feel supported, and I want people to feel like they have room to add, but selfishly, it makes it better because I don't always have the right idea, you know, and there were many things that I would learn about the character and the story from Darren, from Brendan, from Sadie, just by watching them work. And so really, like, you know, yes, I was there to be in service to everybody around there, and even down to like I curated Charlie's book collection. You know, that was like the first thing Darren had me do, was like to go into Charlie's apartment the first day one of on set, before I think you were still in makeup, but I just like went to your library and pulled and added stuff. So I mean, what a gift, you know, as a first-time screenwriter, to be welcomed in like that. It was a rare and beautiful thing. And I also think that like everybody was so, it was in the middle of COVID. For many of us, I know for me, it was like the first thing that we were kind of doing in person. I hadn't been in a rehearsal room for years, you know, and I think we all took care of one another.
Yeah,
you know,
by far and away. I was hoping there would be a garage sale like at the end of the movie, normally they do. But I wanted like the first 2 shelves behind the dining room table for my own collection, but I think they went back to the set designer. I think that was people are amazing.